Preserve or demolish and replace? That's the question being asked about two old downtown Adrian buildings at the southeast corner of East Maumee and South Winter Streets. Known as the Jean Christopher buildings, both date to the 1800s. Vacant and damaged, they are now owned by the Lenawee County Land Bank. We toured both buildings to give the public a look behind their walls. In Part 1, we look at the buildings with Mayor Jim Berryman. In Part 2, we tour the buildings with Chris Miller. He is Adrian's Downtown Development Authority and Economic Development Coordinator. Here is Part 2.
All right, so this was when she owned the buildings, offices and stuff were in the building next door, and this she used for screening stuff, storage, etc. This is of buildings. This is the one that's got the more significant issues. So this building is 3 stories at the front of the building and 2 stories at the back of the building. And it is that transition point between the 3rd story and the 2nd story where all the issues arise. And that is the back wall and part of the ceiling collapsed and pulled that roof and flooring and the flooring of the 1st floor down into the basement. So it's a significant collapse, no question about that. Show you where that is. Lots of vision waste in both buildings. So in this building, we don't have the same kind of structural damage on the roof, but we did have a roof that was not well maintained and is leaking, and that's why we have the moisture here. So you can see there's a lot of kind of crummy looking stuff, but essentially this is ceiling tiles which got wet and collapsed, and then the floors were taken damage. Even so for example, in the Strongback buildings, there were places where the floor was completely heaved there. And this floor hasn't heaved at all. It's hardwood underneath this. So it hasn't been in as bad a shape as long, and that's why the floor hasn't heaved this area. So if we can slide back. At that point, he took a look at these buildings, said, again, no reason to demolish them, and they did not appear to be causing any damage to Mark's building. So Todd revisited the buildings and basically came to the same conclusion here. Unfortunately, he is now in Ireland and will not be back for the City Commission meeting. Our Shane Horn, our City Administrator, was here for that tour, so he got to hear what he had to say. This is always the area when I bring some people into the building, they go, "Oh wow, well, this could be fantastic," and it absolutely could. It's a beautiful area. This building, between the 2 buildings, there are about 50 windows, and the majority of those are on this west-facing wall. So you can imagine, and when you go out and look at the original window openings, this building would be bathed in light every afternoon. Light would come in a real spectacular fashion. You also get an idea of ceiling heights here. So those are 12, 13 feet maybe. So lots of ceiling, and that's a huge asset and virtue for these buildings. The roof is clearly leaking, and we've got some moisture. We've never seen standing water in the basement. In fact, there are still some pictures downstairs from when she left rather abruptly from the building here. And those, if there was a lot of moisture, those would be liquid at this point in time, a mass, and they're not. And again, basement is very strong, solid, good foundation. Again, our building inspector has been in here and thinks both of these buildings, this project is imminently rescuable. Nothing. So this is, this is very much like the Strongback project is. The upper floors, it's been 50 years since anything happened in those upper floors. So
that's very cool.
Yeah.
You see this and you think, well, you got a raised building and you want to
I thought they needed a car to serve here.
Yeah. Right. Well, again, look windows here. So in this section, and I think there's one more up front. So we've got 5 windows in this section alone. And again, imagine if they were opened up. And then you can also see over the other side. So this is the building next door. So this is up on the 2nd floor of the building next door. I am not going to shut it on. I might shut it on Gabe, but I won't shut it on you. All right.
outside, I was looking at the old fire escape outside.
Yeah. So we're standing here on the third floor of the what's traditionally known as the Gene Christopher Building. It's 127 West Maumee. We've toured through the buildings, and the position that I've taken on this as the city's economic development director, coordinator, and DDA coordinator is that this is a salvageable building, and that it's economically feasible to salvage it as well. I think that nobody who has some expertise in the area would look at this and say these buildings have no alternative but to be demolished. And as an asset, especially a historical asset in a very historical downtown, which is really one of the things we hang our hat on. Our community is a historical community. We have remarkable historical assets in this community, and it's really what separates us from others. It's why we've been able to leverage so much money, federal dollars through the state of Michigan, to help rebuild and make our older buildings in beautiful shape and reusable. And it's why there's so much demand for spaces downtown. So we believe this building can be salvaged. We believe that it doesn't take a Cadillac renovation to do it, that it's the kind of project that can be done with a lot of sweat equity, but that structurally the building is sound, and together these buildings could be brought back and be great living spaces and great retail spaces and help maintain and build our tax base in the city of Adrian.